sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the clouds, you're under. Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain or clear? Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl Sharenza with Women Successful Living, and you are on another episode of Conversations with Pearl. And today I'm excited to have a really cool guest because her name has a lot to do with being cool. But I am excited. As you guys know, I love having conversations with other women who are empowering women and uplifting and really have a story and lessons to learn for all of us. So today we have Jack Perez. She founded Cool Life in 2017. And through her platform, she has Perez Champions has changed normalizing aging for women through curated content and women-driven brands. The Cool Life community grows daily with over 54 Cool Life industry thought leaders and 40 women-driven brands. Cool Life offers women an opportunity to share, learn, shop, and play our second act sisters. Previously, she spent 20 years at Summit Strategy Partners, which is a San Francisco-based marketing and public relations firm, where she was a founding partner as well. Jack brings extensive, deep startup experience. Having worked with hundreds of small to mid-sized companies, she is excited to finally birth her own startup. Having earned an MBA from the University of Chicago, Perez carries a hard-nosed business understanding to that entrepreneur world. She's fluent in Spanish and having worked with multiple international firms, has a clear grasp of cross-cultural influences. Jack's passions include spending time with her son, traveling to exotic, off-the-beaten-path places such as Cuba, Jordan, Zimbabwe, Bolivia, and Zanzibar. Sounds like I need to go with you in your suitcase, I think. And an endorphin junkie, Jack likes to throw heavy weights around, is an avid jump roper, and a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. Oh my gosh. Let me introduce Jack Perez to you guys. Welcome, Jack, to the show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Pearl. It's an honor to be here. I'm so excited to share some space with you today.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. So just reading your bio, I remember when I was looking over last evening, I was like, oh my gosh, Taekwondo, traveling the world. I literally would love to be in your suitcase, but so cool. How old is your son today?
He is currently 19 and a freshman in college. So I am a recent empty nester.
Oh, and that's on a whole another story we can talk about too, right? So that is so cool. So what are some of the fun places you traveled with your son?
I did take my son to Cuba. I took my son to Morocco. I've taken my son to Spain. And just this past weekend, I took my son on a quick weekend trip to New York City to see a couple of shows, just to spend time with him because I missed him. And at this stage of the game, it has to be pretty enticing to get him to spend time with me. To get him away from, the friends and the girlfriend and, all that other stuff. So it has to be pretty enticing. So I can't take him to Cuba for a weekend, but I could take him to New York City. That worked.
Yeah, I totally get that. My boys are 24 and 22, and my youngest is graduating college on May 8th, Mother's Day. What a great Mother's Day gift I'm getting. And so I'm loving that whole, grabbing as much time, like you said, as we can with them, because he does have a girlfriend who's pretty serious, I feel. So who knows how much time I'll have just with Nate. So it's so cool. So, well, I'm excited to have you on here. I'm excited to talk about what you do and how you empower women and uplift other women. And I just, let's just start back when you were little and tell our audience a little bit about what life was like growing up and what led you to the path that you're on today.
That's a great question. And it's interesting because when you asked me where I took my son and I said Cuba, that's actually directly correlated to how I grew up. My parents came from Cuba in 1962. So I'm a first generation born American. I grew up in an environment where it was Little Havana on the inside of the front door and the US on the outside of the front door. So, it was an interesting way to grow up. And, my parents, I think I had to grow up pretty fast. I had to be responsible pretty fast because my parents did not have a dominion over the English language and also the cultural differences. I can remember being in my single digits and having to deal with like the electric company or the phone company on the phone, answering questions and figuring out situations because my parents just didn't feel comfortable, handling those situations. So I became kind of a go-getter from the beginning, right? I mean, I can get stuff done. And I've always been that way. I'm a very tenacious, driven individual. My friends always say, look, if Jack says she's going to get this, she's going to get it, whether it's tomorrow, 5 years from now, or 20 years from now. So once I set my sight on something, it happens, which is great. I mean, I like being that way.
I think that's so cool. I mean, as you were telling the story, I could just picture you being that little girl trying to talk to the electric company on the phone and, managing all that. And then, helping your parents with the language too, understanding a new language to learn and all of that. So I think that's, for those of us that are like my husband's family came over from Italy, and their last name was very complicated. So they were from a generation, they had to change their last name. So their last name got shortened. So when you were saying that, I thought I was picturing his family, coming over and all those changes that can happen to us. And I think it also goes a lot to what we as individuals and women and, the people that are listening could probably say too, there's in life, we have different changes we have to, go through. Right. And so those changes and the things that you experience as a child and then growing up and having those, adult responsibilities at such a young age, it kind of fast forwards us, right? I sometimes feel like it makes us that old soul, as people will sometimes call me, because I remember growing up, my dad was in the service. He did 2.5 tours in Vietnam. So my mom was running, the house. I call it now, she was being the CEO of the house. And I remember she'd go to work and I would be watching my sister and brother, and I was only like 9 years old, 10 years old, so much younger than, And so I remember that whole process. And when he came home, money was very tight for them, budget, they didn't have, we ate out of canned food stuff. And so they were like, hey, if you want to go do stuff with your friends, you're going to have to get a job. So like 12 years old, I was already babysitting, so it's really interesting.
Very similar, a lot of similarities for different reasons, but a lot of similarities, meaning, I grew up in a pretty poor household myself. I mean, my dad had been an attorney in Cuba, and then he became a janitor in the US and went back to school and got a master's in education, and then became a Spanish teacher. Because back then he couldn't practice law in this country because he couldn't understand English or speak English very well. Not to mention he would have had to go back to law school and get a whole different, a whole different degree and license and pass the bar, right? So he became a Spanish teacher. Yeah. And but yeah, I mean, I started working as babysitting as early as 10 or 11. And then I remember being short of 16, 15 and getting my first real job. And they hired me because it was so close to being 16. But yes, I bought my own clothes. If I had to go to a birthday party, I bought my own present to go to a birthday party. And it wasn't because they didn't want to, or they wouldn't have if they could have, but it wasn't available. So. Right.
Yeah. It's so powerful. And so I think that leads me to my next question. Like, as you're growing up and you're working in stuff like what you and I are talking, you're at 16 years old, you're carrying a job and everything. What obstacles, you've already shared some obstacles, but can you think of what are some of the obstacles, additionally to what you've already shared, that's made you who you are, like empowered you to go out to the world and, you left a corporate job and become this amazing entrepreneur that you are today?
Wow. Well, I mean, obstacles, sure. I think it's interesting because some of these obstacles ended up being the greatest opportunities, right? I mean, I went and got, I went to college and got, the quote unquote job as a consultant, and was really enjoying being a consultant, and was told though that I was going to really limit my potential if I didn't go back to get an MBA. Now, did I want an MBA? No. Had I thought I needed an MBA? No. But I was being told by people, my boss and, people that I admired and looked up to, that I needed to go do this. So I dutifully went and got an MBA, and then I dutifully went and got a corporate job. I sucked at that corporate job. I oftentimes tell people, I think I was probably one of the most disappointing hires that Hewlett Packard ever made out of the University of Chicago. Because when I got there, I went to Hewlett Packard, and when I got there and I was looking at my boss and, you know, his boss and her boss above that, and et cetera, I didn't want any of those jobs. Like, I'm not made for this. And so that was a real obstacle, because it's like, how am I going to succeed? I had a lot of pressure growing up about, you know, safety, get a corporate job, you know, work for the man, get your benefits, get your insurance, get your 401k. And I get where my parents were coming from. I really do. And I completely understand that. They were really risk averse. They had had so many things happen to them, and they passed that on to me. And so I was really risk averse for a period of time. And I realized that that was not who I was meant to be. And I needed to rise above that and let that go, and know that, yes, my parents instilled that for really legit reasons, but that I needed to make a different decision. And that was challenging. And I spent a lot of time in a corporate job that didn't really feed my soul, didn't really inspire me, and I wasn't particularly very good at it. So that was kind of a waste of time in a way, but everything happens for a reason. Having that much corporate structure and corporate instruction really came in handy when I decided that I wanted to start my own company.
Yeah, I love what you're saying too, because, you know, the thought of coming out, you're looking at them going, oh, I don't want that job. Like, I don't want to be those people, right? Yeah, and I was sitting here thinking, how many women or men, whoever's listening to us, are sitting right now at their desk going, oh, I so get it. I don't like being here. I want to do something different, right? And they become scared to do that thing, you know, whatever that is. And that's something, like, when I coach and I work with women, I'm like, what is your passion? Like I'm miserable at my job, or I'm miserable in my marriage. You know, what's your passion? What in your belly says, if I don't go do this now, I'm going to regret it if I'm no longer here, right? And we start really working down that. And then when they start going, you know, I want to be a speaker, I want to be an author, I want to be an entrepreneur. Okay, so what is it about that? And I make them break it down. So when you do that, then what? Then what, right? And we just break it down. And if they can answer that and see themselves doing that, I'm like, why keep the 9-to-5 job? Okay, let's work you. Yes, you might need that 9-to-5 job just to kind of, as you build it, but let's build it, you know, and let's do that. So I love that you saw that and said, I'm much more than this brick and mortar, sitting, working for the man kind of thing. So I love that. So tell us what led you to start Cool Life.
Frustration about my situation. Yes. So I thought of launching Cool Life in 2017. Now, mind you, when you come up with an idea, there's a hot minute between thinking of the idea and actually making it happen, right? So it took a while to get it to get it out into the world. But it was around the time that now I know, in hindsight, I know this. I did not know this at the time that this was happening. But what I was experiencing was the transition menopause, which, Pearl, happens to every other human on this planet. Yet we know so little about it, and we don't talk about it. And I didn't know who to ask. And I didn't understand all of the different weird manifestations that were happening inside of my body. For the first time, I started being anxious. I'm not an anxious person. I'm a very optimistic. Glass is usually about 3/4 full in my life. And I don't really have a lot of anxiety. Well, I had anxiety, and I had brain fog, and I had a dickens of a time regulating my emotions. I gained 30 pounds. I got up to the weight that I was when I gave birth to my son. I was beside myself, and I was only 52. And I thought, okay, this isn't okay. And I have potentially 40 plus years left. Not going to live them like this, because this doesn't feel good. What am I going to do about it? And when I went out there to look for help from doctors, from the internet, I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything to speak to all of the symptoms, how they were happening. Everybody was like, oh, you're just getting old. Oh, it's just menopause. I'm like, yeah, okay, I got that. Now what are we going to do about it? Because identifying the problem or identifying the paradigm doesn't mean I have to live in it, does it? I mean, we can change that, right? And I set out to make sure that other women don't navigate this alone anymore. And menopause is only one of the myriad and sundries of opportunities and obstacles that present themselves during this time of life, right? We have those physiological changes, but we have many more changes. We just talked about how my son went to college. So there's that transition, right? You go from being a full-time parent to being an empty nester. Well, some women are thrilled that they get their life back. Some women are devastated. And you know what? They're both normal. They're both normal reactions, and they should both be accepted and shared, and we can learn from each other about that, and we can be there for one another. And that's just, there's elder care. Our parents are getting older or they're passing away. Lots of women, as you probably know, because this is your field, lots of women in midlife decide to become entrepreneurs. One of the largest percentages of entrepreneurs entering the marketplace are women over 50. That's just a data point, right? So we have so many opportunities and so many avenues to pursue at this time of life, but we aren't celebrated. And I don't see women in the media that look like me. I don't see women on TV wearing clothes that I want to wear. And I believe that there is a huge gap between mini skirts and Depends. And that's the space that Cool Life lives in. That's the space that I live in. And that's the space that I encourage all of us women to live in once we are in this season of life, which I think I would never go back to being 30 or 40. I'm letting you know that right now. And I want our younger women to know that they have a lot to look forward to, that aging is actually beautiful and freeing and empowering. So that's basically it. I probably said too much, but
no, it was awesome. I love, oh my gosh, you're so right. Like menopause, it's like nobody talks about it. And I love what you said. Miniskirts, it depends. Yes, the young girls that are listening, there's a huge gap in there. There's a huge gap. And I'm like you too. Like we started late in life having our kids. So I'm 57. And so, like I said, our 24 and 22 are boys. And so we had challenges with getting pregnant. And so we were blessed to have one by the heart and one with fertility help. And so it's like, that whole, it was like that 30s, so it was like, yeah, 30. And back then you're thinking, wow. And when I look back, I'm like, I don't want to do my 30s again. I'm loving this. Right. And I love what you said too, because it's so important to those that are listening and to know that your feelings are your feelings. Like they are yours, right? Whether you love being an empty nester or you don't. I'm kind of a happy medium. I like him coming home, but I like him being gone. I'm kind of in between. But I have friends like, oh my God, my kid's coming home. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm like happy when my kids come home, but I just love that you share that, and that you're right. There's not space out there for the menopause, the discussion even, and the opportunities. I know when I was starting, I had actually went early because I had to have a hysterectomy when my youngest was born. And then they kept my ovaries in. And then years later, I was having still some more issues. So we did a complete hysterectomy. And I'll never forget, we were selling our house to come here to Florida from Virginia. And I had a realtor who told me, this is what you're going to expect. Because I don't know about you, but my mother didn't talk about this stuff. There was no discussion, taboo. I mean, my mother didn't even talk about me getting my period. My learning about what happens when I get a period is a box of Kotak pads and a little pamphlet that was inside there. I said, here, read this. That was it, right? So menopause was like, see no evil, speak no evil, right? And so I'll never forget the realtor said, we're packing up the house. And she's like, I just want to tell you this one thing. This, and this are some of the things you can expect as you go through menopause. So if this, brain fog, it's not that you are losing your mind because you moved out of state. It's a thing, So I'm like, so I get that. And anxiousness, you said it, I never was anxious before. And it's so true. Yeah. And I love that you have this space. So tell us about some of you have some products too. And then tell us about what you offer to the women that are listening.
Yeah. So basically the Cool Life platform primarily is there to help educate and inform so that we can share with each other, learn from each other. But definitely there's through this process and journey, because what I said earlier, that a lot of women become entrepreneurs in midlife, I kept coming across more and more women who had products and services, and they needed more avenues to be heard and seen. And I thought, well, why not combine the information piece, meaning having all of these? I have 54 thought leaders from around the globe writing on topics that are relevant to women in midlife. So whether it's money or elder care or dry vagina, we're addressing all the topics, even the tough ones, but we're making sure we're addressing them in a very kind and empowering way, right? There's no shaming, there's no judgment. Along the journey, I kept meeting more and more women who had products and services, and I wanted to be able to include that in this platform. And so I built this curated shopping experience where I bring in women-driven brands. Now, the women-driven brands don't have to be in midlife. They can be any age, because I just want to support women. And it gives us an opportunity to basically purchase with a purpose, to shop small, to buy directly from another woman and put money in her pocket. And so it just gives us an opportunity to be more purposeful in how we spend our money. Because interestingly enough, while we're being ignored and we're asked to, and we're not being represented in media and all of that other stuff, while all of that is happening, women, Gen X women and baby boomer women outnumber every other cohort that is currently alive. And we own most of the wealth in the world. And we're talking billions of dollars. Then add to that we make 85 to 90% of the purchasing decisions in every household. So why are we being ignored? That just seems like such an opportunity lost for all of the brands that are pretending that we don't exist, And that's why I built it. So you could go to Cool Life and read about all the topics that are relevant to us at this stage of life. But if you want to buy a gift for yourself, or you want to buy a gift for somebody else, instead of going to Amazon, instead of buying something just at the store that doesn't have any meaning, and those are fine too. I'm not criticizing that, but I'm saying I wanted to give women the opportunity to find unique pieces that can be purposefully gifted with a story, because I also interview the women, and you can find out a little bit what drives them and why they became an entrepreneur. So there's a little bit of there's a story that goes with these products. They're not just randomly stuck out there to be sold. And that's really important to me. It's very important to me to have a very empowering, curated, cohesive place for women to feel safe.
I love that you're able to put women together and bring products together, because I think it's so powerful. And what you said, like there isn't space like that. And we are kind of the forgotten group of women over here. So, well, those people, right? And it's funny, my husband and I were watching the Super Bowl over the weekend, and I said, because he's always hearing me critique. I'm like, when are they going to put a female in the booth? Like, I love football, but I'm like, why are we down on the sideline still? So those NFL people are listening, stop putting us on the sideline. And then I was just like going, sometimes they have more experience than the people that are talking. And even though some of those people talking were ex-football players, they're not as great talking on it as an analyst side, right? And so I'm like, why? We've come so far, but yet they still limit us in certain areas. And I just love that you've taken a really cool idea and you've put it forward, and the supporting of other women. It just touches my heart. I'll share in a second something we're getting ready to do, but I just love that there's a space that I know I can go to and I can look at now and be like, oh, I need a gift for so-and-so. So now I can go, once I was introduced to it, I was like, this is so cool. I can pick gifts. And I do a retreat every year, a pajama retreat. We do it once a year in September. We bring 20 women together. We're in our pajamas all weekend, no makeup. And I always like to have little goodies that we give them when they leave their room. The room fairy comes in and she leaves something on their pillow. And so I always like to make sure I get something from women business owners that want to donate and pour into other women. So I just love what the platform you're putting together. And I think it's such a great need. And I hope that, a lot more people share at the end too, how to reach out to you. I really am looking forward to this kind of being a push to be like, go check out Cool Life because it's so awesome to see. And something we're getting ready to do, we are converting a vintage camper into a bougie living room. And we're going to go across the country with her. Her name is Pop and Pearl. And we want to go have conversations in Pop and Pearl across the US. We're going to stop at women network groups. We're going to stop and visit like just women that are supporting other women. We want to sit down and have a conversation where they come into the camper and come in and sit in Pop and Pearl. We just talk about like what we're talking about now, what's on your mind? How can we support you? Whether it's a business, whether it's something in your personal life, you need support. We're going to bring speakers with us. And then we're also going to reach out to, I'm one that if I'm going to come to a city, I don't just want to come and take, I want to come and give. So we've partnered up with Unsilenced Voices, which is a national domestic violence nonprofit. And we want to reach out to those communities and get with them and pour into gifts with them. So I've already started peeking on your site, like, okay, we're going to connect with, some of these things. So I'm looking.
Let me know how I can help. Let me know and if you're coming to North Carolina, let me know. I would,
we'll make a stop through. We'll definitely make a stop through North Carolina. So I think I love that, that you're doing this and that this is such a great need, that supporting other women is such a beautiful need. So I'm so glad you're doing that. I'm so honored to have you on here today. I have a couple more questions for you. One, okay. I want to know, and you might have shared some of it, but I would like to know, share with our listeners, who has been the biggest influence in your life and why?
It's so trite, right? I'm going to say my father, but it was my father when I wrote my essay to go to college, and it's still my father a gajillion years later, because I learned from him, that, get educated. No one can take that away from you. They took everything away from him, right? They took his property, his money, his home, his country, but they couldn't take away his education. And so I was just taught from a very early age that if I get it in here, and if I get it in here, no one can take it. And also what I learned from him was to be determined and tenacious and patient and driven. My dad at 30 something left a country and went to another country where he knew none of the words in that language, with a wife and a child, and had to start over again, and did it. And he did it. I mean, holy cow. So what lame excuse could I possibly have? I was loved, I was fed, I had a roof over my head, I was educated, and no one's ripped me out of my environment. I mean, I've had my stuff. Everybody has stuff. You don't get through life without stuff. That's a guarantee, right? That's a guarantee. But whenever I feel sorry for myself or I'm feeling a little downtrodden, I think about what he did and what he was able to do. And I'm like, yeah, Jacqueline, you don't get to feel sorry for yourself anymore. You don't get to be tired. Get back up. So my dad, I know, kind of crazy, huh?
No, it's actually not. And I thought about when you were sharing your story and about your dad, I thought I could just picture him going, coming to a country, like you said, he didn't know anybody, didn't know the language, bringing a family, young family, losing everything. I mean, that I could just kind of see those emotions that he's going through, and the worry and the stress and all of that. And I could just see, there's so many things, like you said, we all have our stuff, we all go through stuff, but how you recover and how you, go, that stuff ain't going to keep me down. Right. Like I was talking earlier on another podcast episode, we were talking about, if somebody's listening to the episode and they feel like, okay, sure. Jack and Pearl, you're talking about, oh, get up. But that's so true. Just push yourself to get up. And if you need help, there's people like coaches and therapists or just friends or nonprofits that can help do that. And so I had a feeling you were going to say your dad. And I just saw your dad like making that whole trek over, and, that picture. And I don't know, the last election, I don't know who it was, whether a Democrat or Republican, but I remember there was a gentleman, I believe he's from Cuba, but he got his U.S. citizenship. And he talked about, he was so passionate about how he was here, and everything kind of like what your dad through, everything he went through, and he loves to be in that he can say he loves his country where he came from, but to know that he, got his citizenship and he's proud of it. And he fought hard for that. I was like, what a cool, I could see your dad and him like having conversations together. So I just love that you did that. So my next question is, so we got Cool Life and it's, we're growing that and you've got women coming together. What's next? Like what's on the horizon for you with Cool Life?
Oh, with Cool Life. Okay. I'm like, what's next? I'm kind of busy, but okay. Well, we're growing. I mean, we're growing. I am still looking for industry thought leaders in categories that we're a little light on. And so I'm always out and about looking for women who want to contribute, who want to, share their expertise with women. And here's the funny part, Pearl, it's not just women in midlife that we're sharing information with. Half of our audience are people below 45. So what that tells me is that women are coming to Cool Life to see what's coming, right? They're coming to see what's down the road for them. And so I feel like we have a responsibility to make sure that we disseminate positive, empowering information, that we share that, because I don't want women to be afraid of aging. I know that I know that when I was in my 30s or 40s, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me when I'm 50 or 60? It's like, I'm going to be old. I'm going to be old. I'm not going to have, you know what? This is the best time. I'm having the best time. So from a Cool Life perspective, we're just going to keep growing. I don't see any end in sight. I really don't. So, but from a personal perspective, I'm going to start taking singing lessons. I'm so excited.
I love that. It sounds so cool. Is
Yeah.
there a certain, like, I know there's different areas of singing. Is there a certain area you want to like concentrate on, or?
I just want to be able to, if someone's playing the guitar and singing, I want to be able to say, hey, play this song in this key. And I can sing I just want to be able to sing. I sing all the time. And I've been a performer most of my life. There was a big period of time where I wasn't performing because I was, working and raising a child, but I've been on the stage most of my life off and on. And I've always sung, but I've never been formally trained. And it's like, okay, I would like some formal training. I want to know how to better use that instrument. And so that's what I'm going to do.
I love that. And so for those that are listening, a couple of things that come to mind as we're talking is I want you to, our listeners to hear some of the lessons you just said. Like, it doesn't have to end just because we get older. I mean, I went and showed up one of my clients' house today because she's been sick and she's been like the sick little thing happened. I'm like, wait a minute, stop. This is what I'm seeing. We need to stop this cycle right now. And I'm like, you're young. She's like, I'm not. I'm like, oh, come on. You're younger than I am. I'm 57 years young. I said, so I have a lot of life to live. I'm not old, And then I like what you shared too, that you have a passion, you want to go sing. I think that's so cool. It's like, you're never too late. And that's what I want our listeners to know. It's never too late to go after a dream. It's never, ever too late to go after something you want to do. Listen, last year, I am scared to death of heights. And I got on a zip line. I did a zip line. Now they all say, oh, Pearl was an itsy bitsy one because you're over a little parking lot. I'm like, I don't care. I got up above the heights and I did it. So there you go. But I love that you shared that. And I think it's really awesome. So tell us, what areas you said you were light in some areas in Cool Life. What are you looking to fill?
Oh my gosh. I would love women who are, have expertise in dating after a divorce, dating in midlife, like what that's like, sex in midlife. We have some women that write about sex, but it's such a powerful and popular topic that a lot of women are afraid to approach. And so I really would love more of that. And fitness. I'm a big believer that we need to keep moving our bodies. We have one machine. We're given one machine at the very, very beginning, and it has to take us to the very end. And if we don't take care of it, it's going to fall apart. And so physical movement and fitness. So I would love for more fitness thought leaders. I would love for dating thought leaders, sex experts. Those are the areas that I really, and to be honest, can I be completely blunt here?
Absolutely.
I am struggling finding people of color, women of color. And the thing is that, like, I'm of color, I'm Latina, but for whatever reason, I'm just really struggling. And so, listen, sisters of color, whatever, we need you because we need that perspective. We need to hear from one another and share and learn, because if we don't, we can't unify, right? We can't
Right.
lock arm in arm if we don't listen to one another. And the only way we can listen to one another is if we actually talk and share. So that's
So I love that. I'm thinking of a few people in my hand right now in some of the different areas you mentioned, but I'm going to give a shout out and I'm going to tag her on this. My friend Pamela Benson Owens, who's in Texas. This would be, I'm sure she's many connections that she can help us with the women of color area. Because you're right, there's so many, and you are the kind of person that wants to touch everybody. So I love that. So those that are listening, that if you're a woman of color and you have some expertise, please reach out to Jax, because I think it would be a really good fit for them too. So check and talk with her. All right. So I'm going to ask you a question before we go to our cards. And that is, I talk about self-care in here so often. We talk about, taking care, menopause is also part of taking care of yourself. And I'm of the belief self-care is not bubble baths. Go get clean, go take a shower. That's really great. Put some bubbles in a bubble bath, but really self-care. Like for me, self-care is, you might find me on the beach once a quarter, sitting there, just hanging out, doing nothing. I might go fly to see a friend, or, just something that's just for me. So what do you do, Jack, for your self-care?
Well, it's funny that you just said that, because I don't think I realized that I had set it up for self-care. But now, once again, with the the whole hindsight thing, one of the things that I have been doing over the last 6 months for self-care is I have been going to New York City for like a long weekend and seeing as many Broadway shows or as much theater and live entertainment as I possibly can, because it fills my soul to be sitting in a dark theater with someone like I just saw Patti LuPone in Company in December. And when she sang the quintessential song, here's to the ladies who lunch, tears were just streaming down my face, into my mask, by the way, but just streaming down my face. And it wasn't because I wasn't sad. I was filled. I was brimming. I was overflowing. My soul was so full that it couldn't be contained. So traveling and seeing live entertainment, and I did not realize how much that filled my soul until we hit the pandemic, and I couldn't do any of that for over 2 years. And it was killing me. It was killing me. Now, the other thing that I do for self-care is I exercise. I go after endorphins. So I lift weights. I'm now training for a 10K. So that's, I don't like to run. So that's actually, I'm doing it because I want to get it done. Because my boyfriend's like, well, you don't like the running. Why are you running? I'm like, because I'm going to do this. It's back to that being determined and tenacious, right? I've already set my goal that I'm going to do this. And in order to do this, I have to do all this garbage to get there. So it is self-care in a weird way, but
yeah, I
tell
love
you.
that. So I'm a Marine Corps brat, and even when we lived in Virginia, I grew up in North Carolina near at Camp Lejeune, and then my husband, we landed in Virginia for quite a few years, and I always wanted to run the Marine Corps Marathon. But I'm like you, I am not a runner. I don't like running. I hate it. I played soccer, but that's the most running I did in high school. And so that's what I'm doing with my training. I'm like, I have no upper body strength. I want to do that because I love to do the Tough Mudders. And I would go do the Tough Mudders, but I'd go around the board. So I wouldn't climb up the thing. But I really want to run the marathon. So that's a great, cool. And I love, you're right. We didn't know some of the things we lost through, the pandemic, like the Broadway shows. I love Broadway shows. It's just so, I'm so glad to hear that it's starting to come back and that you're able to go and do that. So I think that's just really amazing. So thanks for sharing that. So for those that are listening, you've heard, go out and do something, stretch your comfort zone, do some running if you're not a runner, but find something that fills your cup and go do that. So I've been so excited. It's been great conversation. And so everybody knows we close out our show, and I forewarned Jack that we were going to do this, but we're going to do our Better Questions, Better Life. And those that are listening, I get nothing back. So if you want to go to betterquestionsbetterlife.com, I meditate on these cards, or I journal on these cards. So They're just great, powerful cards that we do every week here, and I do them every morning. But I'm going to shuffle them. You're going to tell us when to stop, and then we're going to ask you the question. So here we go.
Okay.
Tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. All right. So your question is, how will I connect with my heart's desire today? How are you connecting with your heart's desire?
Been doing it all day. Talking to and sharing with and learning from other women. I get to do that every day. And I'm doing it with you today here in this podcast interview. I had an earlier podcast interview where we had a great conversation. I spent 2 hours on Clubhouse, in Clubhouse rooms in my Second Act Sisters Club, talking to a bunch of women. And we had a huge conversation about fashion and fashion changes and how we feel about fashion changing in midlife. And then we turned around and had another conversation about how do we maintain a youthful spirit. And I'll tell you, by the end of the day, I'm like walking on clouds. It doesn't feel like a job, right? So my heart's desire is to just be connected. I mean, connection is so important. And even though I don't sit in the actual physical room with these other women, I'm not in the room with you right now, but I still feel very connected to you. And that really fills my heart. So yeah, I've been doing it all day.
I love it. And speaking of Clubhouse, I love Clubhouse. Share with the audience where they can find you. I know we'll put some of the links as well too, but just share with the audience real quick. Where can they reach out to you at? Well,
I'm easy to find. I really am. Because if you go to the platform, which is Cool Life, and it's spelled weirdly, I found a synonym for the normal word cool on Urban Dictionary, and they spell it Kuel. So if you go to Cool Life, Kuel Life, you can see me there. You can see the Second Act Sisters Club rooms in there as well. Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn. Drop me an email at info@coollife.com. I'm so easy to find, and there's always room at the table for another woman. So we can pull up a chair. Everyone's invited to this party.
I love it. So everybody go to the party and go join Cool Life and reach out to Jackson, join the party. And if for the audience who's listening, if you want to learn more about becoming a shiro like Jax is, we love having shiros in our lives, women that are doing powerful things. Always remember, you can go to wsliving.com. You can look up the Shiro League and you can join us. We are a community of women who meet every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. There is a nominal fee to join us, but you get to visit us one time for free. But we are a community of women that are uplifting each other, talking self-care, talking things like what we talked about here today, challenges that we're facing in our life. So if you want to just visit with us and just meet some of the women in our community, just go to wsliving.com and check out the Shiro League. But I want to just thank you, Jax, for being here today. And as we close out the show, I want to remind everybody, we come into this world as this amazing, rough outside oyster, but as you open it up inside, you find this beautiful pearl. So I want to empower you as we close out the show to go find your inner pearl to greatness.
Hello, sunshine, good to